Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here with the C47 and another episode of Gearbox. It's been a long time, a really long time, but I've wanted to do this episode for a while. Kind of got this whole thing worked out here in the studio, and I have this piece of equipment in-house now just for a teeny tiny bit of time because it is still a prototype. But when I was at NAB walking the floor pre the show, because I was setting up to teach my classes, I saw this in Red Rock Micro's booth, and this is a one-man crew, and it is a new product, and my eyes lit up because for a really, really long time I've been talking about somebody creating a product that allows somebody to take away the camera operator, for me generally for a camera, and have the camera move from left to right or from right to left, and for it to keep the person in frame and in focus. Though the in focus part is really a lot of your responsibility because you need to make sure you stop down that camera enough that you can do that. So let's take a look at this system. First of all, what's a little bit different about this is it has a parabolic track here. So the idea is that it is, if you are keeping your subject the right distance away from one-man crew, as it is moving along the track, it is keeping the person within the same framing. And so generally if you're going to shoot something like this, you would center frame, or you can, and I'll talk about it in the next section of this, you can actually have them off center. And so you have this specialized track. And I do want to say that one-man crew is not a traditional slider system. So its purpose is not to be a replacement for a slider. It has a very specific application, and that application in most cases is for shooting interviews, for documentary, for corporate work and things like that. You'll see underneath the one-man crew here there are taps so that you can actually put a plate on here if you need to. And if you're going to mount this with a traditional tripod system, then you could do that, though you want to use something that's very, very heavy duty, and I would generally support from either side as well. You could also support this using C-stands, but my recommendation would probably be to do what we do in most situations, which is what we have here. And I'm actually going to have Eduardo tilt down. Eduardo is somebody who's helping me not only do this, but also shoot some other camera movement videos. And while this is not an attractive shot to see me in my shorts, it's hot outside. You'll see that I have adjustable sawhorses. I actually have them up on some blocks to get a little bit more height in this situation. In fact, a little tip might be to use those 4x4 posts, those for those posts for basically fences. But I've got those raised up, and then if you tilt up a little bit, and I'll put a link, by the way, to Eduardo's website so you guys can see that. You'll see that I have a piece of MDF. Now this is 1/4 inch because that's all I had, but usually when we roll into town, what we'll do is we'll go to a Lowe's or a Home Depot and pick up a 1/2 inch piece of this that's the right size to put a slider on, or something like one-man crew. And let's go ahead and tilt back up. And we can then take a look at, I guess Eduardo reset to B camera, and we'll take a look at some of the controls of this sucker and see what that's all about. So I'm just going to pick it up here, and you will see that on the side of the camera system we have some controls that are right here. And also, while Eduardo's resetting over here, I have the head. Now this head does tilt, and it has a level, a bubble level on it. It's not the type of fluid head that you would use if you were up on sticks, but the idea here is that you get basically the angle that you want, you lock this thing down, and then you just let this thing go. A switch on the back, which I'm going to turn on, and you see everything lights up. And then if we just go over here and I press this button, we can turn on these laser guides, and you'll see that those will light up. And in the next segment, I'll show you how to align those. But basically, what you want to do is you want to position your talent about 6 feet away from the one-man crew. Which is well supported in this situation, and then you're going to line up those 2 dots so one is on top of the other. Other things that you can do here obviously is there's a dial that you can change the speed at which you are moving the actual head and your camera system, and then of course the easiest thing to do is just to press left or right here, and you can see that when I press that or I press this, it'll go in one direction or the other. It has a ramping feature, and my recommendation is to start it at a slow speed and then find the speed that works for you. And you'll see that now it's actually moving, and the idea is that as long as you align those lasers and you're not shooting in an f1.4, which you shouldn't be when you're shooting an interview, that if your subject is center framed, that this will move, and it'll move from left to right and right to left. Your subject will stay exactly in the same place in the frame, and then any of your background objects will move in relationship. So your foreground object staying where it is, and then the background object moving. You'll see it has a nice ramping feature here too, so when we get to the end, it'll actually ramp a little bit. Very, very effective for shooting interviews, and what we'll do in the next segment is we'll look at the laser system and a different setup here so you can see what it looks like in a real-world application. But very, very cool. You can also manually control this thing, and I see a lot of people taking a system like this all in one unit. Comes out of the box, put it on the table, line up the lasers, comes with the head, comes with this. It's about $1,500, and you're shooting an interview without a camera operator. If you're just a one person, you can even set this up as a camera and have it moving, set up a B camera with an operator. You could have a two-person crew, somebody's operating. In fact, Eduardo, you're on B camera, and we're only locked down on this camera, but if I wanted movement there, I could have one-man crew. You could be floating the head over here, and in a situation where we're doing instructional stuff, this is the crew, right? It's you and me as on camera, and it can actually work. Bigger crews, as long as they're good crews, obviously things can get done faster and you can get more done. But in the situation where you're out shooting a documentary film or you're doing corporate work and you have to go bang out a whole bunch of interviews, something like this can save not only a lot of time, but can add a lot of production value. Okay, so now we've broken down the one-man crew and we've moved it over into its A camera position. Of course, you can use this as a B camera on a shoot as well, so it could be over there instead of over there. We've got a wider lens on here on A camera. It's also a little bit further back. And then we've got B camera and a little bit tighter with a slightly longer lens. But what we're going to do is actually now show you how this laser feature works when you have talent here and what you should be looking for. So Eduardo is going to walk over to A camera and he's going to press the laser button. We're obviously not moving yet with the one-man crew, and I've killed the background lights and all that stuff. Here we go, and there they are, the lasers. Now, what you want to happen, and I'm going to show this to you, is I'm going to move forward until there's one laser on top of the other. So I'm going to do that, and I'll just reposition this mic, and then we'll take a look at another shot in a second, and we'll go to a slightly longer focal length so you guys can see what this looks like. So hold on one second. So there. And that's about it. And then I want to be in the center of the frame. So let's just go ahead and turn those lasers back on again. Sorry about that mic noise there. And I'm about centered with it, pretty close, and that's about where I should be. So that's where I should be, or approximately where I should be. And this is really where I should be if I want to keep this center frame. So if I'm doing instructional videos or I'm talking directly to the camera and the dressing camera, then when you're using something like the one-man crew, this makes a lot of sense. We've got the parallax, which is that little curve, and what that's doing is keeping everything in focus. But if you understand how focal lengths work, you understand how aperture works, then you can, and you saw the lasers go off there, you can cheat this stuff a little bit. So let's just turn this sucker on and see what it looks like. I'm going to have it start moving so you can see what it looks like with this wider focal length, and we'll take a look at that. And then what I'll do is I'll just tell you guys I'm going to swap out to a longer lens and and show you guys what that looks like. Okay, good. So we've got it. Yeah, that's about center. And let's just go ahead and reset it. You might as well just reset it and then hit either left or right so we can start the movement. And you will see that I'm staying in the center of the frame, and of course what's happening is the camera's moving on this slightly curved track. And remember, this is the purpose of this. This is not a slider system. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to cut cameras, and we are going to put a longer lens on this. Right now it's got a 40. We'll put like an 85 on there, and we'll see what that looks like with an 85. And I'll just stay where I am, and then I'll talk to you about a couple of other things when we do that. So let's just go ahead and cut B, and we'll cut A, and we'll reset, and I'll be back in a second to show you guys that. Okay, so now we're on a slightly longer lens. I'm in the same position I was. Eduardo, let's go ahead and, I guess, start up the one-man crew again. So get that going. And once there it is, starts to move. Now look, of course, we're on the longer lens here now. So we're seeing that movement. It's more apparent. And I'm still staying in the center of the frame. So if I was talking to camera, it'd be great. Based on distance of where the camera is and what I'm doing, this would obviously be later on in, when we're changing focal lengths in an interview or something like that, or when somebody's talking to camera. And you'll see there it is, it ramps down. Generally, when I'm doing stuff educationally, what I'll do is I'll sort of wait till it gets to the end, and then it'll start to move again, and then I'll start to talk. If I've got two cameras and I have something else to cut to, then I can do that. Are we seeing the mic here? It's fine for Gearbox, but it doesn't matter. Okay. So now the other thing to remember is, let's say you're doing a more traditional interview setup. And if you're doing a more traditional interview setup, what you'll do is you'll have your talent and they'll be talking off camera slightly. So somebody will be conducting the interview there. And the reason I'm choosing this side is that because if I'm being interviewed by somebody over here, then generally we've got camera over there, we've got interviewer, and then we've got the key light coming from over in this direction over here. And so, that's something to consider. Now, of course, if I was over here, then I would frame the other way. I would have the key light coming from over here, and somebody would be interviewing me over here. When somebody's looking off camera, you don't want them to be in the center of the camera. You want them, rule of thirds. You want them to be slightly off. But you can see that's still working. We're seeing that background. We're getting that movement that we want. We've got the B camera generally on the fill side, so we're seeing and shooting into the shadows, and that's really what we want when somebody's talking off camera. But of course, we can use it when the person's centered as well. So I think the magic of the system is that it's self-contained. So you've got the actual one-man crew. You take it out of the box, you plug it in, you set the lasers about 6 feet away. But again, if you understand depth of field, the person doesn't have to be exactly 6 feet away. But you do have to understand to kind of get the optimal situation. Then that's the way it sets up. You set it up. Obviously, this will work for sitting. It'll work for standing. Those adjustable sawhorses I talked about before. The highest that I can find are 39 inches. Which is great for sit-down interviews. If you're getting somebody into a director's chair or they're standing up like I am, then you're going to need to take those sawhorses and raise them up, or you're going to need to have a really sturdy tripod system and center mount that underneath. And then you'll also probably want to support it on either side, depending on how big your camera system is, just so that you don't get any droop, because that will happen. If you're not supporting it. Barely, and it might not be noticeable, but I still, right now, I've got it being supported by a couple of nano stands on either side, which I think helps. If you're using the sawhorses, it's not an issue. You have enough support on both sides, and you won't have a problem at all. So there it is. That's the one-man crew from Red Rock Micro. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm definitely going to be using it for educational content, but I can also see it being used for cranking out interviews where you've only basically got a two-man crew, which would be doable, where you've got one person who's on B camera, one-man crew on the other camera, and then you've got somebody conducting the interviews. If you can get a third person to do sound, that's absolutely ideal. And there you have it. I'll see you guys next time on Gearbox.